I'd like to thank Dr. Wynn for agreeing to present this morning. He is assistant professor at Portland State University in the musicology, ethnomusicology. He received his PhD from New York University. I think that he's the product of very open-minded parents because he is in music and his brother, Brian Yamami, is also in music. And I know there's not too many Japanese American parents who let their kids go into music. And so this morning, we'll listen to his talk. And so I'll turn the time over to Dr. Kiyama.
Thank you, Reverend Hirano. And I should say that when I told my mom that I was going into music, she cried. And actually, when my brother said, you know, he started his ministerial studies a while back. When he told her that he wanted to become a minister, she cried. So, yeah, I think they're patient, but maybe we didn't give them much of a choice. So sorry to my parents. Well, as Reverend Hirano said, my name is Wynn. My day job these days is working for Portland Taiko as its executive director, but I still teach at Portland State University and I direct the Taiko ensemble there. Of course, I'm interested in Taiko, but also interested in Bon Odori. And before we start talking about Obon dance, I do have people I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank the BCA Center for Buddhist Education for inviting me to talk today. I'd like to thank Reverend Abiko. He was my childhood Dharma school minister. And I remember the Eightfold Noble Path because of Reverend Abiko, VT Sklem. Ask him about it. And of course, Reverend Kodani, who has written so much about our Obon tradition, Rinban Noriaki Ito, and Reverend Sugihara, and all the ministers who have shared Obon messages for the virtual Obon dance video series this summer. I'd also like to thank Reverend Hirano, Yumi Hata, Judy Kono, Koichi Mizushima, Reiko Yonaga from San Jose, Mitzi Shimizu, or Gardena, Elaine Fukumoto, L.A. Betsuin. These are all Bon Odori dance instructors who have been really helpful in the virtual Bon dance series. And then my own dance instructors, Sahomi Sahotae and Sahotoyo Tachibana. And then finally, I'd like to acknowledge the work of dance scholar Linda Akiyama. Linda passed away earlier this summer from a prolonged illness. In the 1980s, Linda interviewed Mrs. Helen Chizuko Iwanaga and other Nisei, and she constructed this extraordinary history of Reverend Yoshio Iwanaga's teaching related to children's dance and Obon dance. And without her thesis, our understanding of our Obon tradition would be greatly diminished. So we will miss her. I remember meeting her in her house in San Francisco, and she was warm and generous, and just handed me this photo album of Reverend Iwanaga, the family album, and hopefully I've been a good steward for all of that information. So I do have a formal slideshow, which I will start soon-ish, and I have to apologize, it's a little glitchy. For some reason, when I press the audio, sometimes the slide goes backwards, so I just ask for your patience if I have to toggle back and forth, but it eventually works. I noticed the problem this morning, and I didn't want to try and fix it too much for fear that it would just blow up. So, but before then, I may have met some of you at different Obon festivals. Some of you might know that my wife and I are big Obon fans. So we've been to Obon festivals in New York and New Jersey, Southern California, Northern California, and across the Pacific Northwest. So right now, I think we stand at around 21 different Obon festivals. And we have a spreadsheet at home where we take notes on who makes the best chicken teriyaki and spam musubi. And eventually we hope to attend every Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Obon festival in the continental United States. Obviously, this project has been put on hold. We hope to return to it someday. But when we go to these Obon festivals, I'll be the first to admit that it's not strictly for religious reasons. We go to see different parts of the country and to meet different sanghas, to visit different temples, and we go for the food, of course. We go to see taiko groups, and we go to dance. Now, Obon festivals, as we know, as celebrated in North America, are public events. So people are welcome to participate in the Obon festival, whether they identify as Buddhist or not. And then moreover, the festival is often the big fundraiser, the big annual fundraiser for the temple. So there are many different elements in our Obon festival that are non-religious, that are secular. So of course, most temples sell food and merchandise. Some serve alcohol. Some hold raffles or do bingo. So all of these are not necessarily religious activities. And while we sometimes dance to religious songs like Bonodori Uta, Shinshu Ondo, Gasho Ondo, we also dance to Tanko Bushi and Tokyo Ondo and Ichitasu Ichi Ondo. So we're dancing to like a coal miner song, an advertisement for Tokyo, and a silly and slightly risque tune. Right? So all of these are not really religious. So virtually all North American temples have this same mixture of religious and then secular elements in their Obon festival. And, appropriately or not, this is how our North American Jodo Shinshu Buddhist community celebrates Obon. But we should also remember that we're not the only people that celebrate Obon or similar ghost festivals. There are significant differences between Obon festivals in North America and Japan, of course, not to mention Okinawa or Hawaii, South America, or anywhere else you might find a Nikkei community. So for today, I'd like to just briefly discuss how our practice is unique, how it connects to other Buddhist practices, and then how the sound of our Obon festival is partly Japanese, but is also partly Japanese-American. Reverend Kodani would go even further and say Bonodori in America is Japanese-American, not Japanese. And if he's on this Zoom call, then he can clarify, but I think he's probably not here. Okay, so let's see if I can get this started. And maybe, Judy, could you just confirm that you can see this?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. And also to all of our participants, we noticed that the volume level seems a little high, but for me on my computer, it's really low. So just be aware that you might need to adjust your volume level when it comes to the audio. I also noticed that Reverend Hirano and Reverend Harada are here, so please feel free to jump in if I'm making any mistakes about the Ulambana Sutra, please. And my apologies. So we're starting from some of the basics, and Obon and Bon are abbreviated forms of Urabone-e. And these refer to the Ulambana Sutra, which relates the story of the Buddhist disciple Maggalyayana, or Mokuren in Japanese, and the release of his mother's soul from hellish conditions. Mokuren was a monk studying with the Buddha and attained the 6 supernatural powers. The Ulambana Sutra says, as he viewed the world of transmigration with his supernatural eyes, he discovered that his deceased mother had been born in the realm of hungry ghosts, pretas, and as there was nothing to eat there, she had wasted away to skin and bones. Stricken with grief, Mokuren filled a bowl with rice and approached his mother to offer it. His mother held the bowl in her left hand and took some rice with her right hand. But before the rice reached her mouth, it turned into a piece of burning charcoal, and she could not eat it all. Crying loudly in anguish, Mokuren hurriedly returned to the presence of the Buddha and related to him in detail what had happened. The Buddha said to him, "Your mother's evil karma is so deep-rooted that it is beyond your individual power to alleviate it." But he continued, "Now I shall teach you the way of deliverance. I shall enable all suffering beings to be freed from pain and anxiety and from the consequences of their evil karma." On the 15th day of the 7th month, when the monks end their summer retreat, for the sake of your parents of the past 7 generations and your present suffering parents, you should fill a tray with the world's finest delicacies, together with foods of rich variety and taste, and 5 kinds of greens and cereals, and offer it to the monks in the 10 directions. The Buddha continued, "Every 15th day of the 7th month, out of filial piety, recall your parents of the past 7 generations and prepare a tray of offerings for the Buddha and the monks in order to repay your debt to your parents. All disciples of the Buddha should uphold this teaching." My apologies, it's kind of a long segment from the Ulambana Sutra, but I think it's important just to kind of set the stage, and we often don't go back to the original reading of the sutra, so I think it's instructive. So this sutra was known in the Chinese literature by the 6th century, possibly earlier, and Chinese Buddhists celebrate Yulan Pen during the 7th month of the lunar calendar, when the gates of hell are opened and ghosts roam the earth. Family members offer prayers, food, and drink, burn symbolic pieces of paper, and offer entertainment and floating lanterns to please and transport the gods. The Taoist Hungry Ghost Festival falls on the 15th day of the 7th month in the lunar calendar, and here again, the gates of hell are open and hungry ghosts wander the earth. The Cambodian Ancestors' Day Festival is a 15-day Theravada Buddhist holiday during which food offerings are made to the Buddhist monks, as in the Ulambana Sutra. So in Japan, the Obon ceremony, or Urabon-e, was first held in the early 7th century and became an official function of the imperial household in the 8th century. Now, as practiced today, Obon observers visit and clean their family graves and conduct special services at home altars. Ancestral spirits are guided with candles, lanterns, floating lanterns, or bonfires, and in some cases, they are transported with offerings of a cucumber horse for a speedy arrival, and an eggplant cow for a leisurely return back to the other world. Now, many of these practices have roots in Shinto or regional folk traditions. So this should sound vaguely familiar, but also quite different from the way that Jodo Shinshu Buddhists celebrate Obon. And that is because Jodo Shinshu Buddhists do not believe in spirits. So for that reason, or along that way, Myonyo Shonin, the 21st Monshu, the spiritual leader of the Jodo Shinshu Honganji-ha, interpreted the Obon as a kangie, or gathering of joy, celebrating the teachings of the Buddha and the remembrance of one's ancestors. So in this case, spirits do not wander the earth, but we are meant to remember our ancestors in joy and gratitude. Reverend Patty has made this in a very succinct message in our virtual Obon dance series. So we're not welcoming ghosts or spirits, we're just remembering our ancestors and those who have passed. Now, Obon dancing is central to our practice of Obon, but curiously, there is no mention of Obon dancing in the Ulambana Sutra. So I read you pretty significant portions of the sutra. There's no mention of dance. Bon Odori developed later, possibly from this practice of Nembutsu Odori, a form of ritual dance and recitation associated with Kuya Shonin in the 10th century. So the dance was incorporated a little later, and the way that I imagine it, as the Obon was being disseminated, this kind of ritual was being disseminated throughout Japan, it's going to start blending with just local traditions. And so that means a little bit of Shinto, a little bit of regional religious practice. And so a lot of these are also going to align with harvest ceremonies, where dancing might already be taking place. And so in this way, dancing just naturally becomes part of the Obon ritual and ceremony and observance. So dance becomes part of Obon kind of gradually. In the early years of the Meiji period, the government instituted a modernization campaign based on Western models. And here they strictly suppressed Buddhism through the policy of Shinbutsu Bunri. So this is a disassociation of Shinto and Buddhist deities. Now, for millennia, as I was mentioning, Shinto regional practices and Buddhism are kind of blending and mixing. But here in this case, with the Meiji era and the push towards modernization, it was felt that some of these practices are kind of primitive. And so what that meant was Obon rituals were, well, they weren't eradicated, but they were suppressed. And for us, that means, getting into the late 19th century, it means that some of the Japanese immigrants that are going to Hawaii and North America are coming with only a faint memory of an Obon festival with Obon dance, maybe none. Maybe they danced Obon in their particular region. So there's just this wide range of experience with Obon dance for the immigrants coming to the United States. In the late 19th century, Buddhist missionaries from the Jodo Shinshu Honganji Ha traveled first to Hawaii, then to North America. And Obon services are going to be held in hotel rooms, in homes, sometimes in newly built temples, although very gradually. And Bonodori likely took place on a small scale at these temple gatherings or Kenjinkai prefectural association picnics. We have these little snippets and hints in Japanese newspapers in the United States that mention Obon dancing at a Kenjinkai picnic. And I know that Sacramento had an Obon dance tradition prior to Reverend Iwanaga's arrival and visits to Sacramento. But really, the first thoroughly documented example of Bonodori in North America comes with the arrival of Reverend Yoshio Iwanaga, a Japanese Jodo Shinshu Buddhist minister who moved to California in 1930. I forgot to show this slide, but this is a wonderful slide. Japanese print. Okay. So Reverend Yoshio Iwanaga was born in the Kumamoto prefecture in Kyushu, and as a young minister, he developed a program of teaching children's songs and dances, minyo and doyo buyo, to school children and also young adults working at factories. In 1930, Reverend Iwanaga attended the Pan-Pacific Young Buddhist Men's Association Conference in Hawaii, where he met Reverend Tansai Terakawa, who invited the young minister to come to Stockton, California, to teach Bonodori to Nisei girls. So the idea was that the Nisei boys had their sports and judo or sumo. They had different kinds of activities, but there wasn't anything directly aimed for the Nisei girls. to have them active around these temples. So Bonodori and Doyobu-yo was the idea. Reverend Iwanaga traveled to Stockton and then introduced Obon dance to Japanese American Buddhist communities in Sacramento, San Francisco, San Jose, Fresno, up north to Portland, Tacoma, Seattle, Vancouver, BC, and then south to San Luis Obispo and Los Angeles. All this time, he was ostensibly a minister in Los Angeles, but as you can see from his itinerary, he was traveling up and down the West Coast. As each temple serviced members from different prefectures, Reverend Iwanaga included a variety of Japanese dances. So things like Hanagasa Odori, Goshu Ondo, and Kagoshima Ohara Bushi, along with some new local dances. So things like Sacramento Ondo, San Francisco Ondo, Stockton Ondo, and America Ondo. So we're not exactly sure if Reverend Iwanaga created new melodies and lyrics to all of these. It's possible that he took an existing melody like a bonodori, well-known bonodori or folk music melody, and then just appended new lyrics specific to a place and then called that Sacramento Ondo. The thing is, we don't know. We know that these existed, but we don't have any information surrounding them. So we don't have any lyric sheets, we don't have any music. If you know anything about any of these songs, please contact me because I want to talk with you. These are important examples, I think, of American Obon dance music, and started really early. You know, immediately in the 1930s, we start to see this practice of making bonodori an American bonodori. Reverend Iwanaga developed a Bon Odori ritual with ministers leading the dance procession into a circle and reciting the Nembutsu. And so for many of our temples, this sounds familiar. This comes from Reverend Iwanaga's thoughts on Obon dance here in the United States and just how the ceremony should take place. So he had the minister leading the dance procession into the circle, reciting the Nembutsu, and then often the song Bonodori Uta, composed by Seisui Fuji and produced by the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Music Association, was used as the first and last dance. And so what this does is it creates this religious framework for the Bonodori. So all of a sudden, we start off with Bonodori Uta, and then we end with Bonodori Uta, and it creates this kind of feeling of religious practice because that Bonodori Uta is a religious song and dance. So here is a recording from 1932 of Bon Odori Uta, sung by Issei Mishima. And please let me know if you cannot hear this. So because of Reverend Iwanaga's constant travels, Bonodori became an important part of Obon festivals in California, in Oregon, in Washington, and British Columbia. And this format that he had created with the minister leading the procession, reciting the Nembutsu, the prominent use of Bonodori Uta, was adopted by many Japanese American temples. And so if that format sounds familiar to you, then that's that connection going back decades to Reverend Iwanaga's activities. Now, by 1934, Bon Odori was getting well known. It was being used, of course, in its religious context by the Los Angeles Betsuin, with the article in the Los Angeles Times to the left. But it was also being used in a secular setting, and in a big secular setting, by the organizers of the Nisei Week Festival, an event that drew shoppers to Little Tokyo with a series of cultural demonstrations, a beauty pageant, and then a Bon Odori parade. And here's a photo by Toyo Miyatake on the right. And you can see that it's a huge crowd, even in its first year, 1934. After these successes, and after the success of the first Nisei Week Festival, which of course has continued to this day, a group of Japanese American business owners in Los Angeles contacted Victor Records of Japan and requested a Bonodori song for their use in Los Angeles. So the songwriting team that created Tokyo Ondo, and that is Shinpei Nakayama and Yaso Saijo, was tasked to write a Los Angeles Ondo. And they responded with Rafu Ondo, with lyrics that described Los Angeles as a great place where you could smell the flowers under an always blue sky. And in the second verse, for flowers, go to Pasadena. For the moon, go to the beach. And for the dreamy white sails, San Pedro. So let's take a listen to Rafu Ondo. And America Ondo uses the same music with a different set of lyrics, joining the images of Mount Fuji with the Rocky Mountains, the flags of a Japanese sun and American stars, and a cherry blossom man with a little rose girl. In 1935, the Japanese-American newspaper Rafu Shimpo reported a mammoth Ondo parade of 500 dancers at the California Pacific International Exposition in San Diego, and the Nisei Week Festival continued its use of Bonodori through the 1930s. But perhaps the most visible example of pre-war Bonodori was at the Buddhist Day Parade during the Golden Gate International Exposition in 1940. The event included a parade of Buddhist ministers, scouting units, a marching band, and then the festivities concluded in the evening with Bon Odori. Again, here's some wonderful footage, courtesy of the BCA of the Bon Odori in the evening. Again, no audio. With the outbreak of World War II, approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans were detained in concentration camps. Despite the harsh conditions, Obon festivals with Obon dance were held in many of the assembly centers and all 10 of the War Relocation Authority concentration camps at Gila River, Grenada Amachi, Heart Mountain, Jerome, Manzanar, Minidoka, Poston, Rower, Topaz, and Tule Lake. There are some extraordinary black and white photos here from Grenada Amachi by George Ochikubo, and also some color photos by amateur photographer Bill Monbo that you can find in the book Colors of Confinement that are just stunning, especially the one on your right with the barracks in the back. Just for me is very, very powerful. Now, following the war, many communities avoided public display and held Obon services without Bon Odori. But the 50th anniversary of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in North America was celebrated by the Buddhist churches of America as a Golden Jubilee, with 1,000 dancers performing Bon Odori in the plaza of the San Francisco Civic Center. The event was covered in a 3-page spread in Life magazine, as you can see, excerpted on the left. And activities started to accelerate. In 1949, the Nisei Week Festival in Los Angeles resumed with the commission of a new Bon Odori song written by Ryoichi Hattori of Tokyo Boogie Woogie fame. The score for this song, Nisei Ondo, was sent to Los Angeles. The music was recorded by a group of Japanese-American musicians, directed by Takeshi Shindo, Tak Shindo, as he pronounced it, and also a member of the Fresno Buddhist Temple, Mary Taira, wrote the words and music to Fresno Ondo, with choreography by Reverend Yoshio Iwanaga. Now, Reverend Iwanaga remained active during the war and then was a minister at Watsonville after the war. But here, he was working with his friend from the Fresno Buddhist Church to create Fresno Ondo, which, you know, when you think about Obon music, a lot of this early American Obon music is written by Japanese songwriters, like commissioned for the North American audience. But here we have an example of a Japanese American creating Obon dance music, the music and lyrics. So as Reverend Kodani and others have mentioned, then this is the first example of a Japanese American Obon dance music. The song described Fresno as the capital of grape growing, red watermelons, peaches, we have them all. Till the fields, work the land, earn as much as you can. A year of abundance, a bumper crop, everyone dance. In the 1960s, there was a slew of American Bonodori songs from the Song of Nisei Week with lyrics by Reverend Nagafuji. In Los Angeles to Riverside Ondo, which in this case is not the California city, but refers to Riverside Drive in New York, where the American Buddhist Academy and the New York Buddhist Church was. Now it's the American Buddhist Study Center. Back then it was the American Buddhist Academy. And they're housed in a brownstone on Riverside Drive. Let's take a listen to that one.
夢のアカデミー心の泉なぜか楽しいなぜか楽しいリバーサイドハドソン川にはいつまでも残す面影残す面影リバーサイド
And then the lyrics to America Ondo were written by a poet in Los Angeles, and Sakura Matsuri Ondo was written by the Shinsei Band of San Francisco, and from what I can gather is still used in the Northern California Cherry Blossom Parade. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But here's Sakura Matsuri Ondo by the Shinsei Band. 'The most prolific composer of American Bonodori song resides in Los Angeles, and that's the performing artist and activist Nobuko Miyamoto. She began her career as a dancer, actor, and singer. You've seen her if you've seen the West Side Story film version. And in the 1970s was a founding member of Grain of Sand, an Asian American folk music trio with Chris Ijima, William Charlie Chin. Beginning in the 1980s, she started working with Reverend Masao Kodani of Senshin Buddhist Temple on Bonodori songs written in English. The first song, Yuyo, debuted in 1984, and then was followed by Tampopo Ondo, Gardner's song, Ichigo Ichie, Mottai Nai. I think a lot of our temples dance these, so I'm not going to play them, but Yuyo is just so important as the first song with English lyrics. Mottai Nai is one of my son's favorites with them. More recently, the song Bambutsu no Tsunagari, All Things Connected, was conceived with the members of Quetzal, a Chicano rock band from East Los Angeles. So here we have lyrics in Japanese, in English, and in Spanish, and describes the circle of dancers, the interconnectedness of people, of souls, of rhythms and melodies. It also feels very, very LA to me. And it's a wonderful dance. So let's hear a little bit of Bambutsu no Tsunagari.
Circle, dance, wani odoru. For this, you plan, you lose. For this, you plan, you lose. Don't plan, just dance. Practice, forget. For this, you plan, you lose. Hey.
In the circle we dance, tsunagari, bambutsu. Bambutsu no tsunagari, no tsunagari.
Carácter ceremonial, el fandango rompe el orden, celebración especial, en donde las almas borden con sus ritmos, melodías, que el día de hoy celebramos, ancestral sabiduría, con la cual nos abrazamos.
Bam bam butsu. No tsunagari, bam 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 butsu. No tsunagari, bam 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 butsu. No tsunagari, bam 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 butsu. No tsunagari.
Her latest Obon Bonodori song is Sambazuru, which retells the story of Sadako, the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, and the folding of 1,000 cranes. But I think Nobuko would want me to mention that Bambutsu is being used by Tsuru for solidarity, and that her focus now is on Black Lives Matter. Okay, and from Los Angeles, we're going to now head north. So in San Jose, there is a large Japanese-American community with numerous performing artists and groups. PJ Hirabayashi was one of the founding members of San Jose Taiko in 1973. And as such, most of her creative energy was towards Taiko in the 1970s and 80s. But in the 1990s, she also created a dance called Ei Janaika, Isn't It Good, which she describes in this way. Ei Janaika celebrates our Japanese-American history. The dance movements commemorate the work through which our Issei made their living: farming, mining, fishing, sweating, and the Southern Pacific Railroad. So let's take a listen. This is a slightly later version of Ei Janaika, where she worked with Yoko Fujimoto of Kodo to craft these Japanese verses. So here's Ei Janaika. 'Chidori Band was formed in 1953 to entertain the Issei community of San Jose, and they started performing at Obon festivals in 1959. The band's signature song, Chidori Ban Ondo, was written kind of recently by Reiko So in 1999 and first performed as a Bonodori in 2009. The Gatha Obon, it's festival day, which should sound familiar to you. I forget what page it is in the Purple Shin Buddhist book, but was written in the early 1960s by Yumi Hojo, and was used occasionally as a Bonodori song by Bay Area temples. So here's a recording from 1963. Oh, sorry. There's one of my glitches. Shout out to Mitzi Shimizu of Gardena for finding this 45. Let's see if we can get this to work. Sorry about that, folks. And then here is a more recent version. So in 2009, dancer Reimichi Hanayagi, Reiko Iwanaga, collaborated with Pam Muratsune of San Jose Taiko to transform that Gatha into a new Bon Odori song with a slightly revised melody and taiko accompaniment. So let's take a listen to the newer Obon Obon, it's Festival Day.
Obon, Obon, it's Festival Day. We will gather friends all along the way and bring fruits and vegetables for the shrine. Like Mogalana many, many years ago. Obon, Obon, it's Festival Day. Yare, 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 yoi, 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 yare, 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 yoi, 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 Obon, Obon, it's Festival Day.
And then finally, San Jose Bayashi was written by San Jose Taiko member Matt Ogawa in 2002, and then transformed and featured as a new Bon Odori in 2013. And here we're just taking really quick snapshots of different regions and their kind of newer Bon Odori practices. So in the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle Buddhist Church celebrated 75 years of Bon Odori in Seattle with a new song created collaboratively with taiko drummer Karen Sakata, composer Byron Al-Young, and members of the Seattle Buddhist Church and local taiko groups. The lyrics mention queens and pirates, which allude to the seafair celebration of which the Obon Festival in Seattle is a part of. And then Sensei Kiki, who is Sensei Kiki Hagimori, a veteran Bon Odori instructor who had passed away in 2006. So here's a Seattle Omoide. After hearing Seattle's Bon Odori song, Bobby Yotsuie of the Tacoma Buddhist Temple decided to write one for his hometown. He wrote the lyrics to Tacoma Ondo in English, and his wife Junko translated the text into Japanese. On the recording, you'll hear the Reverend Kojo Kakihara, who's leading the singing, and Donna Sasaki was also involved in the production of Tacoma Ondo. In 2016, Portland groups debuted two Bon Odori songs. Portland Mochitsuki Ondo was written for the annual Mochitsuki event held in late January and performed by Utsuki Kai, a mochi pounding group. And members of the Oregon Buddhist Temple wrote Portland Ondo with choreography by dancer Sahomi Tachibana and debuted the song at the 2016 Obon Festival. So let's just listen to a little bit of Portland Mochitsuki Ondo.
Koi, koi, mochitsuki in the Rose City. Grab your kine and pound with me. Make an oishi tree. Sore, sore, sore. Koi, koi, Udo-san kara umi ni. Even hipsters in the breweries come make mochi with me. Sore, sore.
most recent Bonodori in Portland was written by Cecilia Ang in an American folk music style, so just acoustic guitar and voice. And it references in the final verse some Bonodori, popular Bonodori songs. So let's take a listen to that, simply titled Bonodori song.
Ancestors knew all about the pain of strife. We thank them for teaching us to live a better life. We welcome and cherish their memories this night before they return into the light. All life is a circle of darkness and light. So join us in our circle on this joyous night. The lanterns are our memories of joy and love. So dance in our circle while they shine above. We celebrate our happiness in peace without war. We dance with joy in life before death's dark door. The memory of hatred gives way to love of friends, and we will dance together till the end. All life is a circle of darkness and light. So join us in our circle on this joyous night. The lanterns are our memories of joy and love. So dance in our circle while they shine above. Yes, we join in the circle
fast
for
forward
the
to the
Obon
final verse.
So we'll dance playing baseball as we hit home runs. We dance to recycle and to pound mochi buns. We samba and fandango, too soon we hear the call for the coal miners dance, the last of all. All life is a circle of darkness and
If you
light.
caught all of those
So
references, that means you are a true Obon dance fan. Okay. Running a little short on time, so let's just continue on. Now, outrageous dancers, live bands, popular songs, these are some special features at some of our Obon festivals. In Southern California, a spirited group of dancers known as the Obon Jivers, dressed as Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson. I'm not sure if they're active anymore, but this practice of masquerade kind of echoes the pre-war practice of male dancers dressing up as samurai or rustic characters or women that we saw in that 1934 Nisei Week Festival video. Musical groups like the San Jose Chidori Band, Happy Fun Smile, Minyo Station, and Ensoza perform live Bonodori music. And in the after hours at some celebrations, Bonodori steps are applied to popular songs. So everything like from Michael Jackson's Rock With You and the Beach Boys' Kokomo, this was a while back, to things like Pharrell Williams' Happy. I think in 2016 there was quite a few, or at least a handful of David Bowie and Prince tunes commemorating their deaths. And while this is mostly a recent phenomenon, the Arizona Buddhist temple danced to accentuate the positive in the 1950s, and then continued this practice through the decades with Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, Candyman, and songs by Madonna and SMAP. So thousands of people participate in Bonodori at North American Buddhist Obon festivals each summer, regardless of their religious affiliation or ethnic background. And at the same time, Bonodori is presented as an expression of Japanese culture and tradition in parades, dance performances, and festivals. So whether in these religious or secular settings, Bonodori remains one of the most demonstrative and inclusive practices in Japanese American communities. So like it welcomes people, everyone of all ages, to dance in joy and gratitude for those who have passed. Beginning with Reverend Iwanaga in the 1930s, the American Obon Festival has taken on its own character, distinct from the Japanese Obon tradition. And with new Obon songs from across the United States, I didn't mention the Minnesota Odori and other examples. The sound of the Obon is changing as well. Now, favorite songs like Tonko Bushi and Ichitasu Ichi Ondo, I mean, they still make up the familiar soundtrack of Obon festivals. And, you know, I, for one, love the old scratchy records that were taped onto cassettes and then copied onto cassettes and then passed on from cassette to cassette. And you know, I wouldn't want to suggest that we get rid of that because that's part of our tradition. But these newer songs are, you know, creating a unique sense of place to our celebrations. Now, in most summers, we would be in the middle of our Obon season. And this weekend, I would likely be performing with Happy Fun Smile at the LA Higashi Honganji and seeing friends and family, eating really well. Food at Higashi is really good. And listening to George Abe playing taiko in the Yagura. And if I'm not mistaken, Obon festivals would be happening in Salinas, Reedley, Venice, Vista, White River, Tri-State, Cleveland, and San Francisco. So the global pandemic has caused us all to change our plans, and in-person gatherings are very sadly no longer viable. Our temples have shifted to virtual Obon festivals, and I've been working with the American Bon Consortium and the Center for Buddhist Education to provide Bon dance videos for people to enjoy while remaining at home, you know, so they can be active, they can learn new Obon dances, we can learn new Obon dances, we can learn from new Bonodori instructors from across the United States, and we thought it would be kind of a fun thing for us to do while we're at home, you know. But you know, as we all know, videos and online programs are just not the same. And I know we're all hoping for the return of in-person festivals next summer. And finally, I'm not a minister, but I have a suspicion that they would suggest we take this time to reflect on past Obon festivals, on past gatherings, and to remember and appreciate our friends and family who have passed. This practice of remembrance connects us to Theravada Buddhists throughout Southeast Asia, Mahayana Buddhists in China and East Asia, Jodo Shinshu Buddhists in North America, Hawaii, South America, and Japan, and connects us to our loved ones whom we remember with gratitude and joy. So I think now maybe we're ready to open it up for any questions. Is that right, Koichi? I'm going to stop sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if people would like to turn their cameras on, if you would like to turn your camera on, and I'm sure you can just probably unmute yourself and ask a question to Wynn. This would be a great opportunity to do that. But Wynn, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. I see in the comments, in the chats, that everybody is like, wow, those are amazing recordings, especially those old recordings, you know, they were really, really interesting to see. So thank you so much for sharing those. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and maybe turn your camera on and
maybe I'll get things started by going through the chat, which since I was sharing the screen, I didn't see this. Sorry, I'm just seeing this now. Hi, Deborah. 1932 recording. Oh, that was the Bonodori Uta. Yeah, that was by Issei Mishima. So a Japanese recording. It's really extraordinary, isn't it? So most of us use the Bonodori Uta recording from the 1960s. I think that's the one that all the temples use. But this one is really extraordinary. I like it. Let's see. And then I see that an event in Golden Gate was a windy one. Yeah, fully dressed. Oh yeah. The first time I went to San Francisco's Obon was when why I realized that you do wear your full kimono outfit because it's freezing in San Francisco. Even in the middle of summer, that Obon is the coldest I've ever been to. So in that video, you kind of see the wind blowing their sleeves. They must have been freezing. So yeah, if you go to San Francisco, Obon, wear lots of clothing. And Deborah's, Nobuko's new album released by Smithsonian in 2020. Yeah, and as I mentioned, Bambutsu has been used by Tsuru for Solidarity recently as well. Elvis sighting, they're active, awesome, great. San Diego, yeah. My audio isn't working. Oh, sorry, Reiko. Why do different temples have the Obon on different dates? Are the dates of the Obon significant? Yeah, you noticed in some of the different traditions, it calls for a prescribed date for the Obon to start, whether the 15th day or if a festival is 3 days, then it usually starts on like maybe the 13th, going through the 15th or 16th. In the United States, not so that the different temple communities can go and enjoy the different Obon festivals, and so they're not competing with one another. We see this season of Obon festivals that's sometimes coordinated, or usually coordinated, so that each temple is not conflicting with another temple. Now, in Southern California, there are just so many temples. There are some concurrent Obon festivals. But for the most part, it's meant to kind of space it out. And then you'll see the same thing in Hawaii, where it's like, oh man, there's like Obon festivals every weekend. Like once summer starts, usually like in most summers, your weekend itinerary is set. You just go to the different Obon festivals. And so maybe we open it up.
I have a question, if no one else. Is the content that you presented, both the clips and the actual written content, going to be available at all? So, I tried to take notes, but it takes away from paying attention. So
yeah, I want to get the video available at some point, but I'm not the holder of the copyright for those videos. There are a lot of the music is available. So I worked with Reverend Kodani and the Southern District Dharma School Teachers League to put this CD booklet out, Joy, Remembrance, Death. And this has a lot of the North American Obon music. So Senshin Buddhist Temple folks will know how to get you this CD. This is kind of the follow-up to, I don't know if you have seen this one, The Gathering of Joy.
Yes, I have.
This is the original one, yeah, with tons of information. So this is kind of just like the follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, and I should mention, thank you, Deb. And it also has essays by Reverend Kodani and Nobuko Miyamoto. So really, really important.
Just to kind of promote one of our upcoming events, the BCA will be hosting their virtual BCA Obon Dance, right? And that's on August 15th. And I wanted to really thank Wynn and Reiko, but especially Wynn. He's the one that really compiled all of the video submissions from all the different temples. So the August 15th BCA Virtual Obon, we have a Zoom registration link for that. We'll be sending out information if it's not out already. But please, if you want to see more videos and see unique dances from each of the different temples and all around, please tune in for that as well. It'll be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time as well. So thank you, Wynn, for all of your hard work in compiling all of those videos for that event as well.
It was really fun communicating with different Bon dance instructors from across the U.S. And I think one of the recent ones, or I can't remember when it's going to be released, but we have some footage from Seabrook Buddhist Temple, which is out in New Jersey, which I think is really great. They're doing, they did an Obon festival drive-through where people could drive their cars and kind of watch, and I know some other temples are doing that as well. Any other questions, or I can go to the chat room.
Hi, Wynn. This is Sasson. I have one actually.
Hi, Sasson.
Hi, I was wondering, is there any work, any analysis of the dance bonodori movements themselves, and especially the evolution of them? I just noticed dancing bonodori uta in NorCal versus SoCal is already different, and that's supposed to be like one of the most, strong traditions, right? And yeah, my understanding, like just having looked at videos on YouTube and things like that, is that the dances in Hawaii and stuff are like, they sometimes have pretty different movements to the same songs, and I'm so curious like how that evolution happened and if it's possible to chronicle.
That's a great question. In terms of bonodori uta, I promised myself I would not say anything because I want to keep my friends. There are Northern and Southern California differences, and actually there are other choreographies as well. It's a great case study for different movements attached to a singular song. And I am researching it, and I have some thoughts that I'm not ready to share yet. But in general, the movements, actually, maybe we should ask Deborah if she knows if any dance scholars have been writing about like the physical dances. Is that what you're talking about? Like the movements? Yeah.
I wish they would.
Yeah. Let's put an open invitation for people to do so.
Sorry, I'm doing my PhD on something else. I really can't, but I really look forward to what you're working on in that area as well. Then, when
don't you want to procrastinate your PhD and do it? Do it. The movements in general, as we know, are really are simple, and I think that's what allows people to participate immediately. And some are more rooted in in Nihonbuyo, like Japanese classical dance. And I think I have a sense that it kind of goes in waves. Sometimes certain choreographers do more Nihonbuyo kind of movements. And it's intricate and it's beautiful. And I think in the 1940 video, you saw some really Nihonbuyo movements. Those are a little bit more elaborate. It means that people can't catch on as quickly as possible. So sometimes then we see the wave of more simpler choreographies that people can immediately just kind of jump into the circle. Yeah, I know in Southern District, Komori Sensei is often kind of recognized as doing choreographies that really are simple and attractive to people, and that men would feel comfortable doing. So there's also that sense too, that there are certain movements that are somehow more masculine or feminine, but again, that could definitely be researched and unpacked. But in terms of bonodori uta, really, really interesting, the different choreographies, and I will maybe just open it up for people to discuss among themselves.
I was just going to say, I agree that, there's regional differences, but, there's also some very parts of it that are pretty similar.
Yeah.
In respects to bonodori uta. I also wanted to say that in Southern District, we have created a couple of dances as a group, which I think was the most fun for me, to be part of creating a dance for music, because the music was given to us and there was no dance that was officially associated with it. So, and we were thinking, the thoughts were, Don't make it too complicated. Make it tell a story if possible. Make it so that both male, female, and other could enjoy it and not feel it was too feminine or too masculine or whatever. I think currently, not talking about historically, but currently that's something that's happening, at least in Southern California.
Thanks, Trish. And yes, the Southern District, the Bonodori instructors work together by habit regularly on different projects. And I want to also recognize Elaine Fukumoto, because right now she is kind of bringing all of the dance instructors together. I think her position is an official position, right?
Yes, she's the official leader of the Southern District Dharma Teachers Bonodori group.
So I have another question. So I really appreciated to know about the history and culture and how immersed in the West Coast and all over the federal in the USA. So that is totally different from the Japanese Bon dance in Japan, which I used to grow up in with. So that is a very, I could say, modern from my view. And then I'm very curious about if we could collaborate with the Japanese Bon dance group in Japan to re-export. So we imported in the long time ago, and then we can export and to collaborate is modernizing Japanese Bon dance group in Japan. So that might be great things. But do we have something that kind of a project going on?
That's an interesting question. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is Fukushima Ondo. And so Fukushima Ondo is a very popular dance in Hawaii and was brought over by Japanese immigrants from the Fukushima area to Hawaii. It's one of 2 or 3 Bon dance songs, Fukushima Ondo, Iwakuni Ondo Betcho, that are kind of danced throughout Hawaii, it seems. And in one project, they brought Fukushima Ondo back to Fukushima. And I think it is Great Grandfather's Drum, the DVD. I think that's it. So if I'll make sure that I have that right and then email you. But that was then post 3/11, a return to Fukushima by this contingent of Hawaii musicians, dancers, drummers, to kind of reconnect with Fukushima after the disaster. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were thinking, but that is one connection that I.
Yeah, thank you. That is I think a great example of the after 2000 or millennium. So it's kind of a new movement to connecting with two countries and 2 cultures that within similar background, like a similar background. So that is very, yeah. Thank you for that information.
Another thing that I noticed is that watching some of the Obons from the Shirley from other areas, that some of the dancers were more spiritual, and they had more like gasho or you have the spiritual element, and then some were just more cultural or yeah, just an observation.
Yeah, I think, we talk about the inclusivity of Bonodori, and, we invite everyone to dance, and, and because the Obon is a fundraiser, we're inviting lots of people to come in. The more, the better, right? In most summers. So Obon dance becomes this kind of the space in between religious practice and then just festival enjoyment. So yeah, you're going to see Bonodori danced religiously and then just for fun. Some people, I don't know, if you get Reverend Kodani on a good day, and by good day I mean like if he's like cranky and awesome, he would say that that's part of the problem maybe, and that we've forgotten what Obon dance means. So I also noticed in the comment section, some groups refer to it as ondo, Bonodori as ondo, and that is like a secular, non-religious version of Bonodori. And I think Reverend Kodani also suggests that it's a misunderstanding of Bonodori. So there's that idea, which is true, is that Bon Odori, when used not in the Obon festival context, it's using a religious dance in a non-religious way, kind of. I don't always. I'm not. First of all, I don't know if I'm presenting Reverend Kodami's views the way that he would want it to be represented, so please don't quote me, even though this is being recorded. But let's just put it this way, there are some people that feel like it needs to be in its religious context to be true, and there are others that just like it that people are dancing Obon dance. And I will have to say, I got into Obon dance research-wise. I mean, I grew up in San Jose, Betsuin, so I grew up with the Obon festival. I don't think I was an enthusiastic dancer as a kid. I probably just went, and I think I liked the game booths more than anything. But being in the tradition, just kind of got used to the Obon dances, and then. Someone asked about Happy Fun Smile. When I was in New York, I started a band called Happy Fun Smile that played like Okinawan classic rock and enka and old Japanese music, street music, chindonya, and bonodori. So what we would do is we played in East Village bars, like in the, people there were young Asian Americans, and we would teach them Tokyo Ondo, Ichitasuichi Ondo, and Tanko Bushi. And so we would end the night of drinking with a bunch of people dancing bonodori in a bar. And I thought that was pretty awesome. But that is very much not a religious context. So all this to say that, I probably am not the best person to ask about that religious secular divide, but there's different ways to dance.
Well, I think it's also used as like Buddhist outreach, because if you make it fun and lively and all-inclusive to dance, but it exposes people also to Buddhism at the Bonodoris.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, Wynn, this is Jesse from Chicago, the Midwest Buddhist Temple.
Hey.
And we separate our Bonodori festival from our chicken teriyaki festival because there's just no room to dance. We get maybe 600 or 700 dancers for Bonodori, and it gets pretty crowded. And of course, there's a mixture, multi-generational families, love to see the kids. Dance, and of course at the end, or everybody dances. Of course, you're a fool if you dance, and you're a fool if you don't dance. So my question is more about the movements. I mean, learning the dances. I've as an American, I found some of the movements sort of feminine. But it doesn't matter when you're dancing. It's and just want to understand maybe the origin of the costumes, and maybe why, or you could give us some insight of what dressing as feminine, or as a woman, where that came from, or what significance of maybe identity or something there. We don't do that there. It's in Chicago, so it would be something strange if we saw it here.
Okay, Jesse, thank you. That is like 50 million questions in like 1 minute. And so I don't know what to hit first, but let me just start and we'll see where we end. And that is, there are certain temples that separate out the carnival festival fundraiser with the Bonodori. And I think that's an important distinction. Not every temple has Bonodori as part of a fundraiser. So whether it's for doctrinal like purposes or just logistics, as you were mentioning with Midwest Buddhist Temple, for New York Buddhist Church, they don't have a parking lot. I mean, it's Manhattan. So they have their Obon Festival in Bryant Park. And so they can't sell food or drinks. So it's not a fundraiser. So actually for New York Buddhist Church, they lose money on their Obon Festival each year. Other temples are like, can't believe it, right? And then Senshin, of course, is another important exception because they purposefully do not include fundraising as part of the Bonodori. Bonodori is for the Sangha. And so there it's at Senshin Buddhist Temple, the Obon Festival, everyone is supposed to dance or has the ability to dance. They're not working the booth for like 12 hours. So, and in terms of the way that people dress, first of all, let's separate out the 1934 video. That's a completely different thing that we can talk about later. But I think if you're just talking about just wearing yukata, I mean, that's the way that you feel about a yukata kind of depends on your cultural upbringing and whether it's something that you're used to or something that you wear just once a year for Obon and is special in that way. So I think for a lot of people in the tradition, if you go to Obon and you see someone in yukata, there's not necessarily, you're not thinking in terms of masculine or feminine. You're just, I mean, you're thinking in terms more of, or they're getting fancy for Obon. or if it's like super hot, they're like, wow, they wore a yukata, good for them. I'm just wearing jinbei, or hapi. So that really depends on your cultural perspective, because I don't think there's an immediate male, female, masculine, feminine kind of connotation to yukata, because in the summer, it would be fairly common, less so these days in Japan. But you go to you go to a traditional hotel or onsen, or everyone's just wearing yukata. It's not a thing. For the 1934 video, there is masquerading happening, and that is, I don't know, kind of like a Halloween kind of, people have described Obon in so many different ways, like it's Memorial Day, or it's kind of like 4th of July, it's kind of like Halloween, it's kind of like a lot of those things. And so I think in past decades that masquerading, that dressing up was stronger than it is these days. But that's why I love the Obon Jivers, and I'm glad to see that they're still active, is because they kind of bring that back. Don't know if that answered anything.
Yes, no, Wynn, thanks for saying that.
Dr. Wynn, we are approaching the 12:30 hour right now. Is there just another couple of final questions out there, or would this be an okay time to kind of formally close the session? And if you'd like to stay on, or if you're willing to stay on for a couple minutes after, if that would be okay.
Koichi, can I ask one final? I realized that I forgot one final slide.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And first, thank you everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning. afternoon to talk about Obon dance. It's one of my favorite things, and so I would just I'll stay on the Zoom call because I talk about it for all afternoon, as you can tell. But I do want to solicit your help if possible, and that is, I mentioned some of the songs that Reverend Iwanaga choreographed and possibly created: Sacramento Ondo, San Francisco Ondo, Stockton Ondo, America Ondo. These were from the 1930s. If you have any information on any of this, or you know of someone who might remember something about these songs or dances, please email me. My email is down there below, pdx.edu. And also, in addition, Walnut Grove, 1934, apparently had a men's dance. If you notice at the bottom of this article, it says, among some of the best received numbers of the evening were the young girls Tokyo and Hinomoto Ondos and the men's Walnut Grove Ondo, an original creation. Walnut Grove folks, I really, really am interested in finding any information on this. And then similarly, Seattle Ondo or Pacific Ondo, 1935 or so, there was a newspaper article that said, Seattle Ondo or Pacific Ondo, the first Ondo composed outside of Japan, will be recorded by Jin Jutaro Gondo, well-known Kibe Nikkei singer here. Now, I've already been in contact with the Gondo family, and they don't have any information. But if anyone else knows anything about Seattle Ondo in the mid-1930s, please contact me. And if I got anything wrong, if you have additional information that you'd like to share with me, please email me. I'd love to be in contact with you. And thank you, Koichi. I think that's it.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, on NHK, they were showing Obon dances in Japan, and there's a Nembutsu Uta. Why don't we do that here, being that we're Joro Shinshu Buddhist?
I think that sounds familiar. Where's our Bon Odori instructors? Trish, does that sound familiar? Like a...
I don't remember ever doing a Nembutsu.
Okay. So I don't know what it was that they were focusing on, but Nembutsu Odori is probably could refer to quite a few different things, and that is any kind of chanting while moving, chanting or dancing, or maybe like Namamidabut's to movement. So Nembutsu Odori is a kind of a general thing, but it could be a specific song too. I'll look into that. But we do have...
It was a Pacific Uta, and which had music and choreographed to that.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing it when I was watching NHK, and they were showing the various obons that were happening there. And I saw that, I go, oh wow, there's a Nembutsu Uta. And I was just wondering why we don't do that here in America, being that we're Joro Shinshu Buddhist.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it's just familiarity with that particular one. Maybe if it's being shown on NHK, maybe it'll come around to Obon season next summer. But we do have, Bon Odori Uta and Shinshu Ondo, Gasho Ondo, and others that I'm forgetting, but that are specific either to Joro Shinshu or Japanese Buddhism. So we are getting a little bit past 12:30, and Koichi, did you want to
Yeah, I wanted to see, Dr. Wynn, first of all, thank you so much for spending your morning and afternoon with us today. As always, I've been working with you on the Obon videos. It's been such a pleasure to have met you and to work with you. You're such a wonderful person to work with. You're so passionate about what you do, and it's been a real joy to have met you. So again, thank you for all of the work that you do to preserve this amazing part of our history and our culture, especially in the United States. So thank you for what you do. And again, thank you for your wonderful presentation today. I know that everybody really enjoyed it. And as you mentioned, why don't we formally close the session right now, but you said you were okay with staying on for a little bit longer? Oh, okay, great. Wynn could talk about Obon all that. So if Reverend Jerry, I wondered if Reverend Jerry was still on the call. I know he's been having some connect. Oh, wonderful. I would like to ask maybe Reverend Jerry to formally close the session at this time.
Thank you, Wynn. Thank you very much for this talk. I know you made all of us long for Obon even more. So those of you that have feeling, please join us for our virtual Obon with BCA. So close with Gasho, please. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Koichi. Thank you, Dr. Kiyama.
Naman.
Stay safe.